people come to my sessions from down that area. Now, I'm sharing a screen with you. Can you both see what I have up on screen?
Yes.
Great. David, this is actually what I sent you. I think I emailed this to you yesterday. You may recognise it. Yep. So this session, being only an hour, I'm really giving you sort of publishing 101 to the both of you. We will have time for questions at the end, but I really want to explain this because a lot of people really do struggle to understand the publishing process. And I put that down to the fact that there are a lot of companies out there that make it look like they're a traditional publisher, but they're not. And they take a fee for publishing. But the fact is, if anyone asks for a fee for publishing, then they are not a traditional publisher. They are actually a self-publisher, or some of them might term themselves a partnership publisher. Some people are even calling themselves a hybrid publisher, but I find that is a bit of a sticky term. My idea of a hybrid publisher is one that does both traditional and self-publishing, but they're very separate. Yep. Anyone who takes a fee for the publishing is in fact helping you to self-publish.
Right.
So this is the other thing that is confusing for people, is that they think that there are lots of ways to publish, but in fact there are only two: traditional or self-publishing. Right. There are different ways to self-publish, which I'm going to go through. So I'm going to start though with the traditional publishing. So in the first column is the traditional publishing column, and you'll see that I have a pathway for both. So as we were just talking about, David, you can submit to publishers. So for instance, you might Google or work out a list of publishers that you would love to be published with, and then you might go online and look up their submission guidelines and submit to them. Now, traditionally in this situation, a lot of publishers don't want you to send out to a whole lot of publishers at once. But if we adhered to that, everyone would be waiting 20 years before they got around to all of the publishers. So what I would say is, if you do submit to a publisher and you are lucky enough to be offered a contract, then you need to go back to all of the other places that you submitted to and withdraw your book. You don't have to say why, you just say it's not up for offer anymore. Right. You'll see from here, I'm assuming that you can see when I highlight things. Yep. When you submit to a publisher, the wait can be anywhere from 3 months to 18 months. Right. I have actually had friends who have submitted. Oh, someone else is wanting to come in. Where'd they go? No, gone. Okay.
But when you say a contract, presumably that's just a contract for that particular book. It's not a...
Yes.
You know, I mean, more than that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. It is hard to get a contract, because when you think about publishing with a big publisher, their overheads to publish a book are around $50,000. So they are going to be very risk averse, and they're only going to pick up something that they think that they can make money from, which is fair enough. They're a business, and so they have to make sure that they can guarantee as much as you can guarantee in any business that what they take on is actually going to make them back the money. So consequently, you'll see that only 1 or 2% of books that are submitted will be offered a contract.
Yep.
Oops, someone else is coming in. I'm just going to let them in. I'm just going to wait for them to come in before I continue.
Okay.
Hi, Seb. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you able to turn your camera on?
Actually, I'm driving. I'd rather not. I'll be in the background.
Okay. Just so you know, Seb, I am recording this, so I will be able to share the link with you so you can catch up on what you have missed. And if you're driving, I hope you're driving hands-free.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I'm about to get in the vehicle, so that'll be great if I can get that link. Thanks. Okay. Thanks for...
Yes.
I'm sorry that I'm late.
That's okay. That's all right. So we're just talking about where I don't know if you can see my screen, but I've shared a Word document that has some information about traditional and self-publishing. So
Yes, thank you. I can see that. And I'll be on the background, and if anything, I'll participate via the chat.
yeah, that's fine. No one needs to actually say anything. They can just listen to me and then we can have questions at the end. That's totally fine. Or if you have,
thank you.
If you have anyone has questions as we go, I'm more than happy to answer those. So, as I said, when you submit to a traditional publisher, the waiting time can be 3. I've got 12 months here, but I have had a friend who submitted a book to quite a big publisher, and it was 18 months later that they had a no thank you. Some publishers don't even respond, so you never know if they even got it or read it. That is just, they do get so much stuff sent to them every day, so that is, hard for them to keep up and respond to everybody. In terms of a contract with a traditional publisher, they are essentially renting out the words of your book. Mm-hmm. You always retain the copyright, but they have full control over the contract duration. So this means that they will be telling you what the cover looks like, how the layout goes, to a certain degree about the editing. So for instance, if you sent in a book and they suggested, well, yes, we'll take it on, but we want you to change X, Y, Z, you have to agree with that. Otherwise, they won't offer you a contract. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you might have a novel where you have, say, a female main character and they do certain things happen in the book and they want you to change the character to a man and tell you what the name is and a few things like that. Now, you might not want to change your novel that much, in which case you probably would say no to the contract. But some people are really excited to be published, so they're happy to do whatever it takes. Sure. In terms of what you get paid, now, a first-time author will get around 7.5% of the recommended retail price of the book. So if the book sells for $25, you are going to get $1.88 per book. So as you can see, you have to sell a lot of books to make any decent money. Once you become more well-known, you might get 10% of the RRP, but obviously that will depend on you proving yourself with the first book.
Please, if the book doesn't sell for the recommended retails, they blast them off for $10 each or something. You presumably only get the 7.5% of the $10, or what?
No, it's that the RRP is set at the start, right. And so even if it goes on sale, you still get the same amount.
Right.
Yes. And especially these days, because we sell a lot of books online and you'll see prices vary quite dramatically, it's still, they have to have this set price of the RRP. So as you see, it's recommended retail price. Yep. So they could sell it for less, especially places like Amazon play with prices all the time. And sometimes the book might be $10, sometimes it might be $30 when you have set the $25 price. So you will still get the same. In terms of how long it takes to publish, from when you start the project, so when you signed a contract to when you see the book in the shops, it can be up to 18 months. So 12 to 18 months is the usual time. 18 months is more realistic because they're not going to be just working on a handful of books. They've probably got lots of books happening in a year, like, 200 or 300 books possibly, depending on the size of the publisher. Mm-hmm. And so it'll take a few months for editing and then a few months for design. And then they need to pre-sell the book to the bookshops at least 3 months prior to it being stocked in the bookshop. So everything in the book industry goes in 3-month cycles. For instance, if you want your book to be in sale in the bookshops for Christmas, it needs to be stocked in the bookshop in September, so 3 months out from Christmas. And you need to actually have your pre-sales in 3 months prior to that, so around June. Now, I have heard of a few friends who have had a publishing contract with a big publisher, and they've gone to do this pre-sale selling with lots of bookshops, and they haven't really had many sales or many orders, if you like. And so they haven't gone ahead with the publishing of the book. So it's gone through that whole process of editing and layout and design, and then it's been canned at the last minute, which in my mind would be really disappointing if that happened to me. Because it means that you've spent all this time, you don't get any payment, and you could have possibly had the book out if you did it yourself in that time. The cost to you in the traditional publishing sphere is zero. You know, there might be some times when you might have to pay for some travel or something like that. But in terms of the actual publishing, the moment that you pay $1, it actually comes over to the self-publishing sphere here. So this is the traditional way of publishing. So a traditional publisher might be Penguin Random House or Hachette or Text Publishing, any of those big publishers who, in fact, Text Publishing is our smallest big publisher, if you like. Penguin Random House is fairly well known, and there are lists and lists of publishers online that you could find if you wanted to find one to submit your work to. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. In terms of the publishing process, you'll see here, both of them are exactly the same. You go through the same steps from the finished written manuscript to selling in the shops. The only main difference might be that it might take longer in the traditional publishing side. And once it's out, the selling time is quite short. If after 3 months you're not making decent sales, the project will possibly be shelved. That's because the real estate in bookshops is quite sought after, if you like. And so it really needs to do well in order for the bookshops to keep stocking it. So you really kind of have this sort of, you kind of have to come out of the stalls, if you like, if you want to take a horse racing analogy, quick and make a good impression on bookshops and media and do some good sales. Otherwise, after 6 months, they will move on to another project.
Well, those steps 6 and 7 in that publishing process,
yeah.
I'm assuming with the traditional publishing, they're doing all of that, whereas with the self-publishing, you're doing those.
Yes,
Right?
yes, definitely. So we're going to go, I will quickly go through each step. Yes, you're very, very right there. In terms of, so in fact, the same goes here for the promotion of the book and the author. That is the traditional publisher's role as well. And this is why it costs $50,000 for them, because they will spend probably about $20,000 on marketing and distribution and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of these steps here, they're still going to pay for everything, but the steps are going to be the same as on this side. Obviously, when you're self-publishing, you're paying for all of these, but they're doing it all. So in terms of the whole process for the author, there's no risk involved, and they are paying for everything. Any other questions about the traditional publishing side at the moment? We will come back if there needs to be.
Sorry, I'll keep asking questions, but
that's okay.
If you're not in a particular hurry or anything like that, and you've done it all, and you're not sweating on the money necessarily, yep. There's no real downside to sending it off to publishers, is there?
Not at all. No, if you're happy to wait, 3 months or 6 months for an answer, definitely I encourage people to do that.
Right.
Just be aware that in terms of your contract, they do have full control over it. But a lot of people are more than happy for that to happen.
But,
Yeah.
but equally, if you send it out, are there any unscrupulous people involved where all of a sudden you find your book on a bookshelf under someone else's name, 12 months down the track? Does that happen?
Not really. I have heard of a few people where they have submitted something and something similar has come out some years down the track, but it's very rare. And that did happen to someone. Someone did ring me and I encouraged them to do something about it, but I don't think she felt confident to do that. But it's pretty rare.
Right.
You have when you write something, you have full copyright on it. You don't have to prove it. All you have to do is prove that you have written it and the dates around when it was written. Yeah. So if that was to happen, I would be pursuing that person with very sharp teeth because we want to protect our copyright as a creator, definitely.
Okay.
Lace, I just have one question. Hopefully I'm not ahead of where we're at, but just in terms of, the difference between traditional and self-publishing, say for example, I self-published with Busybird and I wanted that book to go into our local bookstore.
Yep.
What's the difference there between, traditional publishing and self-publishing in that case?
Yep. So you can definitely do it. You would just have to get a distributor to help you, or you can actually go with your book to a particular bookshop, or you can actually send out information about your book to all bookshops if you want to. The only bookshops that may not take on a book that's been self-published might be some of the big chains like Kmart. You know how you can get books in Kmart and Woolies and some of the department stores.
Yeah.
You have to go through a distributor to get into them. So it does depend on your book. Some people are doing a book because it's sort of a bucket list thing, and so they don't particularly want it to be in every bookshop in the country. If you wanted it to be in your local bookshops or even in your local city, it's quite easy to actually contact bookshops yourself and get them in there. It's obviously just a bit of your time that is involved in that. Okay.
And one more question, just while I'm on there.
Yep.
With self-publishing, if I had 2 or 3 events coming up where I want to sell my books, or maybe public speaking events where the cost was already included, with self-publishing, is there a particular time frame, or what's the sort of procedure compared to traditional publishing?
In terms of having books, you mean?
Yeah, in terms of getting books ready for events.
Yes. Well, that is the advantage of being self-published, is that the printing usually takes about a week. So if you know you have an event coming up, you can say, well, I'll get 50 copies or however many for that event. That's the thing too. If you're traditionally published, they won't allow you to have extra copies. They will control the selling of the book. Usually within a contract, you might get, say, 15 copies as author copies. But other than that, you don't actually get any access to books yourself. So this is where traditional publishing is good in terms of, because there's pluses and minuses to both. I don't say any is better than the other. So, and it comes down to what your book is and what you want to do with it. But if you have a business and your book is for your business, self-publishing would definitely be the way to go, because you have full control of everything, the look and design of the book, but also the selling of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll probably come back to traditional publishing if there's something that we've missed, but let's look at self-publishing. So, the other thing, which I actually, so the project time, as I said here, is 12 to 18 months, but also there's that waiting time that David was just talking about, where you may have to wait 3 to 6 months before you even find a publisher. This is one of the advantages of publishing yourself, is because you can start immediately if you want to. So again, it comes down to whether you're happy to wait or not. Yeah. So when you self-publish, you can do everything yourself if you want to. You don't have to be a publisher. You don't have to register as a publisher. Obviously, you can't self-edit. I would not recommend self-editing. I would, if that was the only thing that you were going to pay for. Editing, I think, is the most important aspect of a book. You want to make sure that it is as polished as possible. And actually, if you were to want to go down the traditional publishing route, I would suggest that you get your book published, because the more polished it can be, the more likely you will be picked up. It's not to say they won't edit it again, but it will show that you are professional about your work and that you are willing to be edited. So if you decide to self-publish, yes, you can do it all yourself, or you can use a self-publisher, which is what Busybird is. And there are, we are dime a dozen. It's not like we are anything special out there. And that we can help with any aspects of the publishing journey. So any of these things here in the publishing process, we can help you with. Quite often we help people by signing them up for a whole package, but some people might just want editing. They might just want a cover design, or they might just want the book typeset. They might just want help with printing. We don't do promotion for people, but we can definitely guide them in the right direction, and we can definitely help them with distribution and selling, but we don't do it ourselves. We're just too tiny to be able to do that. So that is the first thing to do, is to decide if you're not going to go traditional publishing, can you do it all yourself, or do you need help? So a business like ours is having someone holding your hand through the process, or you can do lots of homework and work out how to do it yourself. This is a guide here as to what you need to be able to do. So if you think that you can do a lot of these, then you're probably a long way down the track. The beauty of deciding to self-publish is obviously that you can start immediately, or you can work out, you might say, if you have a business, you might say, well, I want my book for, 30th of March, say next year. Then you can work backwards and work out how much time you need to actually publish the book. In terms of the legalities, as I said, you don't have to be a publisher yourself. You do need to register. I would highly recommend that you register with an ISBN, and that's the little book number on the back of the book. You don't have to be a publisher to do that. In fact, you don't even have to have an ISBN to publish a book, but bookshops would require one if you want to sell it in bookshops or online. Yeah. Did you have a question, David?
No.
No, that's cool.
Is that something that you do yourself, Blaze, or would that be something that you would do?
We would, if you were to publish with Busybird Publishing as your publisher, we would do it for you, and then you have our logo on your book.
Okay.
But you can do it yourself. So it just depends. Some people like to have this publisher moniker on their book because it makes it looks like it's published with a publisher. And bookshops do look on books that have a publisher's logo on it more favourably. But again, it depends on whether you want to have your book in the bookshop, whether that is part of the whole process for you. Some people are happy just to, even with, say a novel, some people are just happy to publish it and have 200 copies. And if that helps them to pay back the cost, then that's great, because it's sort of a bucket list thing for them. But some people want to go further and sell more copies and hopefully make a little bit of money out of it. It depends on how big you want to go, because if you want to go further than that, then you probably need some PR and some marketing and promotion and things like that, and that's obviously more cost or more time involved for yourself. As with traditional publishing, where you get a contract, I highly recommend that you make sure you have an agreement for any fee of service. So for instance, if someone signs up for a contract, a book project with us, we write up an agreement that itemizes everything that we're going to do for them. But even if you're just having someone edit your manuscript, have some kind of agreement in place to make sure that you agree on the price and how long it's going to take. I've heard of people, find an editor and 6 months later they still don't have their book edited. So you just want to make sure that you do a bit of homework there. The royalty obviously, when you self-publish, is 100%, but obviously you have to take out your costs. And this is where I like to help people to make sure that they do get a return on their investment, because I don't want people to have to take out a second mortgage on their house to pay for the publishing.
Right.
Yep. On average, the project can take about 3 to 6 months, depending on the book. Sometimes people do kids' books and they need to get illustrations created, in which case it just depends on the artist. They might take a long time to create those images. That can sometimes slow things down. But if you have all of the content sorted, you can publish a book in about 3 months. 3 months is about the average that it takes for people who we work with. Again, it depends on your life and how it fits in with your life. In terms of cost, again, it's kind of a bit like how long is a piece of string, because some people say, I want a book that's hardcover and I want embossing on the cover and I want ribbon markers in my book and I want full colour and I want a soft cover version and I want an ebook version. It just depends on what you want. So it can, on average, say 50,000 word book on average is about $5,000 if they did it with us. But sometimes people go up to 10,000 if they want all of those bells and whistles. And some people come to us with a book that's sort of 120,000 words. So there are lots of variables. Again, make sure whoever you work with gives you an agreement that spells out exactly what you're going to get, so that there are no surprises down the track. You want people who are really open about how they work and transparent about what they offer and what is involved in the process. As an example, a place where you might end up with more costs is in the layout of the book. You might have the book laid out and then you find lots of proofing issues because you may have not had it properly edited. And so when you come to the layout, there are lots of things to fix up, and sometimes that can cost more because you've already had the book laid out, and once you make changes, it moves everything around. So you really want to make sure that you know up front what the cost is going to be above whatever it is that you first agree on. If any, they might have an all-inclusive cost. Again, as I said, all of the steps are exactly the same, but you as the author are paying for all of these things. You might have someone in the family who can design a fantastic front cover. That will save you around $300. You might have someone who can proofread your book. They may not be a professional editor, but they might be a really proficient reader, and they may work in some kind of field where they're doing that kind of thing. That will save you quite a bit of money too. So it just depends on the things that you can do and what you need help with. You might be really good on things like Photoshop and layout programs. We use InDesign as our layout program to create the book. And that is an ideal program if you can get your hands on it. It's an Adobe program and it costs about, I think, $25 a month. So sometimes people are willing to pay that to do it themselves.
Well, it's just the proofreading is that it's quite different to the editing, because presumably it's always about making sure that the words are spelt correctly and the punctuation is correct. That's all.
That's right, yes. Proofreading, by the time it gets to the proofreading, you're really just checking for missing full stops or typos, or checking dates. You know, if people have lots of dates, if it's a history book, you want to make sure that they're all correct.
Sure.
And also looking at the visuals of the page, you know, how they look when it's going to be printed. You want to make sure that, you know, a photo is in the right spot, for instance, those sorts of things. Yeah. So if you know someone with a good eye for detail, that's fantastic. In terms of selling time when you self-publish, there's no real time limit. It's up to you in terms of how much time you have to devote to promoting it and selling it. And there are lots of ways that we can help with that. I highly recommend people go print on demand, because print on demand gives you global distribution, which means basically that your book can sell all over the world online, and that you can pretty much set and forget. But again, the more promotion that you can do, the more successful it will be. But unlike the traditional situation where the first 3 months are quite crucial, selling your own book, you know, you might publish it, and then you might have a launch, and you might sell 30, 40 copies at the launch, which is great. That gives you a bit of boost of income. Then you might be a bit tired of the whole process and have a little bit of a rest, and you might just sell a few books but not as many. And then in a few months' time, you go, okay, I'm going to do a little promotional thing around my book, and you might sell 20 copies in a couple of weeks. It's just up to the amount of energy and promotion that you are willing to do. But if it's still relevant, there's no reason why you couldn't be selling that book in 3 years' time.
Lays, can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Just in terms of ebooks.
Yes.
If that was a particular preference, in addition to an ordinary book, you know, like can you do both? I suppose my question is, can you?
Yes.
That can be done. And it's always been an interesting thing of mine, because most people that I speak to still like to smell a real book and hold a real book, you know. But there are people, for instance, I've noticed a lot, who are on business and they're traveling.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want to read it from an ebook. So is that something that you, as a self-publisher, Busy Bird Publishing, would do? Or
yes,
like,
I always actually recommend it for people, because everyone has different ways they like to consume a product. You know, some people like audiobooks, some ebooks, some print books. You know, the print book is definitely well and truly alive and has continued to sell well year on year, even when ebooks came in and everyone thought that the printed book, what I call the real book, was going to die. But the good thing about having an ebook is, it's relatively inexpensive to produce, and you can put it up online and just set and forget, and people can buy it. But it also helps them find your print book. So they might be Googling and find your ebook, and then see that it also has a print book available. And so, or they might buy the ebook and go, I really like this book. I'd like to buy the print book for somebody else or for myself because I want to keep it. That happens a lot as well.
Is that with Amazon?
Any number of, there's lots of ebook sellers, but Amazon is one of them, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That is, you know, pretty much what I cover today in terms of the overall, the way the two publishing streams work. So what I would say now is that we can open for questions. If there's any particular aspect of any of these things that people want to talk about. Any questions?
Please, I'd like, if I could ask a question,
Sure.
no particular order.
Yeah.
I understand the blurb, as they refer to it, is particularly important from a marketing point of view. Is that correct?
Yes.
So,
These are the things that anyone should be doing if they're going to publish a book to make it more successful.
yeah.
First thing is, you need a good pitch And that pitch will actually really help you land a traditional publishing deal as well. So you need to be able to say to people what your book is in 1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah.
That's first thing. A really good book cover is quite vital. And then, because if you think about your own reading habits, I guess, or how you find books, usually you might be attracted to a cover, then you'll turn it over and read the blurb. And the blurb will quite often be the thing that hooks you to or want to buy or read the book if you're in the library. In terms of the blurb, I say, don't make it any more than 300 words.
How many, sorry?
300 words.
300 words?
Yeah, and make it in third person. Third person present tense is ideal. If you can make it very engaging, then you will go a long way to picking up a traditional publishing contract, but also help you in terms, if you were to self-publish, it will help you really get the book out there and sell well. But yes, the blurb is quite important. Yep. Do you have another question?
Oh, did someone else want to ask a question? I had another one that might sound a bit odd, but sort of what's in a name? Is it good to have? Should you make up a name as the author, or use your own name? It seems to me that some authors' names just look good, sound good, and others don't.
Yes. If you have a very common name and there's lots of authors with your name, then it's worth coming up with something a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I suggest to people that a pseudonym is quite hard, because it means that when it comes to promotion and being out there as an author, it gets quite hard, because half the time you can't remember what your real name is.
Right.
So yes, obviously, if you look at my name, it's a bit unusual. So I keep my name as it is, but I don't know if David Kennedy is a common name or not, but you might.
It's done to death.
Is it? Well, you might then use initials, so it might be D, whatever your middle name is, Kennedy.
Right.
That might just make it look a little bit different to other people and a little bit less confusing when it comes to people Googling your name.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. The good thing about your name is it's further up the alphabet. And that is usually quite helpful. If you think of my name, Van Heck, I'm quite a long way down the alphabet.
It's interesting, isn't
it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sina, do you have any questions?
I'm just wondering, I suppose just in my mind, I was thinking about the initial step of sending a manuscript through. And I know everyone is different. Each publisher has specific guidelines around that. But is there, from a publisher's point of view, is there, I don't know, is there any difference between sending it to a traditional publisher or to self-publishing when it comes to your written sort of manuscript that you send through?
Most publishers will have submission guidelines. So, for instance, if you go, okay, I want to go to Penguin Random House, I would go to their website and find out what their submission guidelines are. And also, if they're actually taking any submissions, a lot of them aren't. So you want to make sure they are, or they will have windows at particular times of year. So, they might have 3 months of the year when they're open to submissions. Some of them also have online submission windows, so it's worth looking at those. For instance, I know Allen and Unwin has one, I don't know if it's once a month or once a week, but they have a thing where you send it in. If you don't hear back from them within 2 weeks, then you haven't gotten something. In terms of if someone was to send something to me, I'm not as fussy, because obviously we're sort of talking at it more from inception of an idea or inception of a product. So when it comes to the manuscript, my editors will actually be cleaning up the manuscript if they get editing done, obviously. If if they're coming to us and they don't want editing done, then yes, I will have a particular way that I want the manuscript to be supplied so that it's, you know, all clean and ready to go.
Right. Just have one more question if I could.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of unpack a little bit about the hybrid publishing? I'm still a little confused as to
Yes.
what that is.
Yes,
Yeah.
and different publishers have different, I guess, different ways of describing what hybrid is.
Mm-hmm.
I call myself a hybrid publisher because I do both traditional and self-publishing.
Okay.
So that means that I do a handful of books a year where I do pay, we do live on this traditional side where we have a contract and we pay a royalty to the author. But being small, we can only cover the expense for a small amount of those projects. And so the other side of our business is where we help people to self-publish. That's what I call a hybrid, but other companies have different definitions. So they call a hybrid thing where essentially you're self-publishing, but they actually also invest some of their money into the project, and then you might share the profits. It might be 50-50 or 30-70 or whatever the way they describe it is, but I would look very closely at the small print, because what I have seen with a lot of people is they might pay, say, $10,000 to publish their book, and they might be expecting 50% payback. But if you look at the small print, quite often the 50% is 50% of the profits. So in actual fact, you might only get $1 a book. So that is where you really need to make sure that you look at the contract, get legal advice even, because I wouldn't want to be handing over $10,000 of my money and then realise I'm only going to make $1 a book. Also, you want to be able to get books for yourself. And what are they charging you for those books? Quite often they will sell you books at wholesale price, not cost price. So that to me is not a good deal for the author. I don't want to be paying $15 for my book when I know it only costs $7 to print. But again, you want to look at the small print. So different publishers have different definitions of the hybrid. Some of them call themselves a partnership publisher, where it's supposedly 50-50, but when you look at the sums, the 50-50 is a little bit skewed.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks, Blaise. I just have one last question, and David, I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in while it's fresh in my mind.
Everyone's questions help everyone, so I'm sure that David will learn something from your questions.
Okay, cool. I guess just jumping into the self-publishing now, and thank you for explaining that, Blaise, about the hybrid. The self-publishing, so is there a limit for getting a print run on your book with self-publishing?
No, again, it depends on how you do it. When people work with us, we suggest that they go print on demand, which means you can get 1 book or 10 books, 1,000 books, whatever you need. We can even do a mix. You could do print on demand, and you could also do a bulk print run at the start, maybe 200 books, and then just go, say 10 books at a time after that. So if anyone is trying to sell you a package where they say you need to get 1,000 books, I would run the other way, because you don't need to do that in this day and age.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh. That was going to be my question also, so thank you. You've answered for
it. Good.
Lovely. Thanks, Blaise.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing about publishing is, because I do lots of sessions like this and there'll be lots of questions. It's one of those things that the theory and the practice are 2 different things. Quite often you'll forget half the things that I've taught you anyway. But I guess the beauty of working with someone is that I know, or whoever you choose to work with should know the publishing process, through and through, and so they can actually guide you through it. What I do worry about when people decide to do it all themselves is quite often they will spend more money because they don't really know what they're doing, or it'll take them 3 times as long. So that is just something to really make sure that you do your homework, so you know who you're working with, even if it's just individual designers, or, you know, for instance, if you look at a layout of a book, sometimes people will hire a designer, but they're actually not, they're not familiar with book design. And so when it comes to getting it printed, they haven't really set the book up properly because they don't understand the way a book is laid out. Same with book cover design. I've seen people come to me with their book cover design, and if you look at a book, you know, it's wrapped around. Okay, it's actually one piece of paper, or when you design it, it's one file with the back of the book, the spine, and the front. I've had people come to me with their design, and these two are the wrong way around. Or they send it to me in 3 different things: the front, the spine, and the back. So whoever you get, you want to make sure that they have done this kind of work before, so that you are actually getting a good product at the end. Yeah?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I suppose it's related to what you're talking about.
Yep.
Going back to those steps, those 7 steps there, when it's done, if you were to just do it online, for example, there isn't any cost for printing it, is there?
That's right. So if you have an ebook, yes, there's definitely no cost there because people can just download the file. But if you use a print-on-demand company, we use Ingram Spark as a print-on-demand company, but there are lots of them.
Yeah.
We set you up in an account, and then we set up your book files into that account. So what happens is, if somebody sees your book on, say, Booktopia, and they want to buy your book, they click the link to your book, they buy the book, they pay the money, and then the order will go to Booktopia. Then Booktopia will send that order to the print company, and it will get printed and sent from the printing house straight to the buyer. And then any money after the commission to the bookseller and the print cost gets accrued in your account. So you don't have to have books or send out books or anything like that.
Right.
Yes. So yes, technically you're not actually printing anything. It's getting printed as it's bought.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
Which is amazing technology.
Sure.
And it actually is revolutionizing the publishing industry, because in the past, to make it worthwhile, you did need to get 500 or 1,000 books printed to make it worth your while.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. That sounds pretty good. Yeah.
So this is very much just an overview of publishing. What I do like to do this workshop often, because people still get confused about the differences, and there are unscrupulous companies out there who act like they are a traditional publisher with all of this in line, and they supposedly offer a contract to someone and then say, oh, that'll be $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. I've met people who have spent $30,000 on their publishing and don't even have a book to show for it, because there's been so many things stopping it from happening properly, or they've been sold lots of marketing packages that are pretty much not worth anything. So they're the sort of things just to be aware of. But obviously I could teach anyone all of this stuff over a weekend and they would have much more knowledge. But I just think knowing the differences in terms of helping you to make a decision how you want to go forward is actually really important. Very helpful.
Well, you've helped me make up my mind, boys, what I'm going to do, I think.
Good. That's good.
What are you going to go with, David? I'm curious.
What's that?
What have you decided to go with?
What I suspect, if I'm understanding everything correctly, is so it's Sina, was it?
Sina.
Yes, Mayor. I've written my book for such as it is, and I've been talking to Blaze about it. It seems to me that the sensible thing, and I'm not expecting to become a famous author or make a lot of money out of it. I'm doing it for had a bit of fun doing it. But it seems to me that the sensible approach now is to get you, Blaze, to do sort of 1, 2, 3, those first 3 steps, or however we work that out, and then to go to this print-on-demand situation on the basis that that effectively covers your distribution. And then if I wanted to have 6 or 8 copies for myself to give to friends, I would just order those through the print-on-demand and pay accordingly.
Yeah, you get top marks for understanding it all. Some people really struggle to get their head around it, but it seems like you actually have a really good idea of how that works. It's great.
So that seems like